PIF and J presents Breaking Ground.
Hello, PIF family. This is Breaking Ground. I want to begin here today just kind of reminding you about our previous session. In Matthew chapter 13, we see the parable of the sower. And what's so beautiful about the story, not the story itself, but how Jesus or how the author breaks this down in chapter 13 is that we see three sections. If you remember, we find the parable itself, and then we see the purpose, and then Jesus goes as far as to explain what that parable is. And what we discussed last session is that here is Jesus literally giving us a guideline or a handbook on how we ought to study the Word of God. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to dive a little deeper. And I want us to bring our attention and the focus on verse 4 of chapter 13 and verse 19. Now, let me just kind of summarize it for you. In verse 4, we see a sower that drops the seed along the path. And this path that is referring to, we're going to call it compressed ground. It's like concrete floor, right? But what happens is that the birds come and they devour them. And in verse 19, this is where Jesus explains to us, and it is a metaphor for those who hear the word of God, but doesn't understand it. And when they do not get it, it is snatched by the evil one or the devil. Now, this tells us something very profound about the world that we are living in and that we are experiencing. You see, we are fighting both an internal and an external battle. Now, pay close attention to this. The internal battle that I'm calling is this compressed ground that we see in our story. This is the hardened heart. Right? And the external battle, I'm sure you can guess it, is this devil or the evil one that comes to snatch away from our heart, essentially robbing us of the word of God. Now let's talk about these two things. I want to bring your attention to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 18, because here it talks about the hardened heart. Listen to this. It says in ESV, they are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God, because of the ignorance that is in them due to their hardness of heart. Now, speaking of hardening of hearts, we need to look at the case in the Old Testament by the name of Pharaoh. I'm sure you're familiar with the story where the Israelites, the people of God, were enslaved in Egypt. This is when God had called the brother Moses to come and deliver his people, God's people, out from slavery. Remember the phrase that became so popular, let my people go. This is the story. However, there is a collision, a crash that comes about between these two characters of Moses and Pharaoh. However, it's not Moses, but God who is calling them out. And if you recall the way that this takes place, we see lots of signs and miracles. This is the part where God tells Moses to throw the staff onto the ground, and it turns into a snake. And what's so amazing in a way, is that Pharaoh goes, all right, my magicians, throw your staff onto the ground and turn them into snakes. And it goes through all these sorts of crazy supernatural events. And then comes the 10 plagues. Now, we're not going to review all of that. But what I want to bring your attention to in this story, and if you read it, you'll find that it tells us God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Now, this is a really interesting statement here. It's not that Pharaoh's heart was hardened by some sort of an outside circumstantial matter, but it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Now, why in the world would God do that? And a bigger question ought to be, does God do that to us today? The thing that I want us to know here, this is not a case of God turning an innocent man. You follow? See, Pharaoh was not this innocent individual where God's like, well, for my purpose and for the sake of being God that I am, I'm going to turn this innocent person into this evil individual to make him the anti-hero of the story. So let me harden his heart. No, that is not the case. Instead, what we're seeing is an already evil man that God further hardens to fulfill his task. Now, church, I want you to think about this before we go into the next point. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the condition of our heart matters very much. And the reflection needs to take at this very moment for you to think about, well, what is the condition of my heart? Is it a compressed ground? Is my heart hardened. And if that is the case, there is perhaps a possibility of me being Pharaoh-like, where if I continue on this path of living this life, then maybe God could further harden me. So as you think about that, let's look at the second section or the second part where this external battle takes place, where the evil one or the devil comes to snatch the word from our hearts. Now listen to this, and I'm drawing from different parts of the Bible here. In John chapter 10, verse 10, it tells us just exactly what the evil one, the devil, comes to do. It says here, the thief comes only, now emphasis on the word only here, to steal and kill and destroy. And it continues, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. But think about that for a second. The thief, the evil one, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And if so, what is he exactly stealing? What is he exactly killing and destroying? Now, I need to pause here for a moment and really speak to you as a pastor, all right? Many confuse this with what is rightfully mine. Now, do you know where I'm going with this? A lot of Christians today have this false idea that the devil is out there to take away what is rightfully yours. Your blessings, your possession, your health, your prosperity, your money, your family. And every time we go through a circumstantial matter that is difficult for us, how many of us blame the devil? Oh, devil's out to get me today, but he shall not. Hallelujah. We have these moments in our lives, don't we? What the evil one, what the devil actually does is that he snatches the word away from us, taking away any chance at it landing in our hearts. They say that our hearts are the wellspring of life. And here's the evil one preventing us. Because as he prevents us from allowing that seed to grow in us, it prevents us from growing, prevents us from the blessings that God truly gives. And I'm talking about spiritual blessings, and from having the life that God had intended. Ultimately, the evil one is robbing us from life. Now, what is it about our heart that is so important, ladies and gentlemen, that God considers it so valuable? Well, in order us to understand and take note of the importance of the heart, we can find that evidence in the language that these people had spoken back then. Why? Because the language is a reflection of the culture. Isn't that true? Now, consider the Hebrew language, consider the Hebrew culture. I want to introduce you to a few words. Some of you may actually remember this. I may have preached on it in the past. The first word I want to introduce you to is called melech. Now, there's going to be a few words that I'm going to try to pronounce here, so bear with me. But the thing that I want you to take note of are not the vowels, but the consonants. The M comes before the L, melech. And this word means king, all right? Keep this in mind. And here's another word, a Hebrew word called lamech, right? The L comes before the M, and it's the antonym of a king, which is a fool. So here's a king, and here's a fool. Here's melech, M before the L, and the lamech, L before the M. Now, here are two more words I want to introduce you to, which is the word for head and word for the heart. The word for head in the Hebrew language is called melech, all right? Again, here's the prefix of M. And the heart, the word for heart is lev. Prefix is the L. Now, if you put your head before your heart, the M before the L, you are a king. But if you put your heart before your head, the L before the M, you are a fool. Now, while it seems obvious a king is better than a fool, according to Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians, he boasts of being a fool. Why? Because he understands the importance of heart. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we have to learn to place our heart before the head, the L before the M. So today, take the time to reflect and carefully think about how God values you. Notice how God doesn't care about your accomplishments. He doesn't care about what family you came from. He doesn't care about your past, your reputation, or anything the world tends to place value in. But God values your heart. So take care of it. Pray that God softens your hardened heart. and pray for protection from the evil one who is roaming according to the book of Job. He's going to and fro, up and down, ready to snatch the word of God away from you. So today, ladies and gentlemen, as we end this second session, I want to encourage you into diving into the questions that I have provided below and begin to carefully evaluate your heart as you answer them. And remember, it is so important that we take care of our hearts because this is the very thing in which God values for you. And what He values is that your heart grows by the seeding or by the plowing and the sowing of the Word of God and nothing else. And don't let the devil take that away from you. Thank you, PIF. I'll see you guys in the next session.